You feel better after cutting people off, and that is exactly what should scare you. Because the more relief your brain feels after disconnecting from people, the more your nervous system starts learning that isolation equals safety. And once your brain learns that pattern, it stops asking whether people are good for you. It starts asking how quickly it can escape them. And at first, that feeling looks like peace. Like clarity, like finally choosing yourself after spending years choosing everyone else. But what if that feeling is not actually peace? What if it is your nervous system slowly teaching itself that people are associated with emotional cost? And what if the more often this happens, the more automatic it becomes, until one day you no longer experience it as a reaction? You experience it as personality, as identity, as this is just who I am now. And the strange part is, most people never notice the exact moment this shift begins. You do, because there is always a moment, a very specific one. Someone calls you, someone texts you, a familiar name appears on your screen, and before you even decide whether to respond, your body already reacts, not emotionally, physically, a slight tension in your chest, a pause in your breathing, a feeling of pressure you did not consciously create. And in that pause, your nervous system already predicted something. This interaction will cost energy. And if you slow this down carefully enough in your own life, you realize something uncomfortable. You are not reacting to the person. You are reacting to the version of yourself you expect to become around them. The tired version, the drained version, the emotionally heavy version. And your nervous system is trying to avoid activating that state before it even happens. That is why some people can contact you and you instantly respond. No hesitation. No resistance, no internal negotiation. And other people create friction before they even speak. You see their name, and your energy drops before the conversation even begins. And the terrifying part is, this process happens automatically. Your body calculates emotional cost before your conscious mind even catches up. And what most people never realize is that your nervous system does not operate based on logic. It operates based on prediction built from repetition, which means every emotionally exhausting interaction you tolerated in the past became data, and your brain stored that data carefully, quietly, without asking permission. And now your nervous system uses that information to predict future emotional outcomes. Not because you're antisocial, not because you hate people, because your system is trying to protect you from overload. And this is where most people misunderstand themselves completely. They think cutting people off is a conscious decision. But most of the time, it is not. It is accumulated emotional exhaustion slowly turning into automatic behavior. And automatic behavior is dangerous because it does not feel automatic. It feels like identity. It feels like, this is just how I am. But personality is often repeated survival strategy mistaken for identity. And once you understand that, your entire self-perception starts changing. Because maybe you were never cold. Maybe your nervous system simply became efficient. Efficient at reducing unpredictability. Efficient at avoiding emotional chaos. Efficient at protecting energy. And here's where this becomes deeper. Your nervous system is not trying to maximize happiness. It is trying to minimize threat. That is its job. And once emotional unpredictability becomes associated with people, your system quietly starts reducing exposure to them. One delayed response at a time. One canceled plan at a time. One ignored message at a time. Until distance slowly becomes your normal emotional environment. And the dangerous part is, distance feels good at first. Relief feels good. Silence feels good. Nobody demanding anything from you feels good. No emotional recovery period feels good. No pressure feels good. And because it feels good, your brain reinforces it. Immediately, that is how conditioning works. The brain repeats what reduces stress quickly, even if it slowly creates isolation later. And if this feels uncomfortably familiar so far, stay with this video. Because what you are understanding right now changes the way you see every relationship you have ever had. And here's something most people never notice while this pattern is forming. You slowly stop responding based on desire and start responding based on anticipated recovery time. Think about that carefully. You are no longer asking, do I want to talk to this person? You are asking, how exhausted will I feel afterward? And that shift changes everything. Because now connection is no longer evaluated emotionally. It is evaluated neurologically. Through energy prediction, through nervous system calculation, through emotional cost analysis happening automatically in the background. And once your brain begins organizing relationships around recovery instead of connection, your entire social world changes. Some people start feeling too expensive. Some conversations start feeling too heavy. Some relationships start feeling impossible to maintain. And what is terrifying is that this often happens slowly enough that you never consciously notice the transformation. You just wake up one day and realize you stopped reaching out first. You stopped oversharing. You stopped explaining yourself. You stopped emotionally chasing people. And maybe for the first time in your life, you started protecting your energy instead of sacrificing it. And that feels powerful at first. But here's the paradox nobody talks about. The same system protecting your peace can eventually start protecting you from life itself. Because your nervous system does not distinguish between unhealthy unpredictability and healthy emotional vulnerability at first. It categorizes both as activation, as uncertainty, as possible emotional cost. So eventually your system starts choosing predictability over connection every time, and predictability feels safe. That is why silence becomes addictive. Not because silence is fulfilling, because silence is controllable, no surprises, no emotional spikes, no disappointment, no tension shifts, no emotional labor. Just control, and control feels safe to a nervous system that spent years adapting to unpredictability. And maybe this started earlier than you realize. Maybe you grew up around emotional instability. Maybe somebody's mood controlled the emotional atmosphere of the house. Maybe you learned to scan tone changes before you learned to trust people. Maybe you became emotionally hyper-aware because unpredictability once protected you from conflict. And children who grow up in emotionally unpredictable environments often become adults whose nervous systems constantly anticipate emotional shifts. At first, this looks like empathy. Later, it becomes exhaustion. Because eventually, your system realizes something devastating. You cannot emotionally regulate everyone forever. And when that realization fully enters the nervous system, people change permanently. Because now your body understands something it cannot unlearn. Some relationships only survive because you abandon yourself inside them. And once your nervous system realizes that, it begins resisting those dynamics automatically. That is why you no longer tolerate things you once tolerated easily. That is why your patience changed. That is why your social battery changed. That is why your desire for solitude changed. Because your nervous system changed. And here is something important. Solitude and loneliness are not the same experience. Loneliness is painful disconnection. Solitude is regulated silence. And people constantly confuse the two. You are not sitting alone wishing someone would save you. You are sitting alone, finally experiencing reduced activation, reduced unpredictability, reduced emotional demand. And for a nervous system that spent years overloaded, that reduction feels euphoric. That is why being alone can feel better than being misunderstood. And here is where the real danger quietly begins. Because eventually your nervous system can become so adapted to emotional reduction that peace itself slowly turns into avoidance. At first, solitude heals you, then it starts hiding you. And most people never notice the exact moment they cross that line. Because avoidance does not feel dangerous in the beginning. It feels intelligent. It feels mature. It feels emotionally efficient. But efficiency is not always health. Sometimes efficiency is just emotional minimization. And emotional minimization slowly reduces the size of your life without announcing itself. And this process is almost invisible while it is happening. Because your brain interprets relief as correctness. If something reduces activation immediately, your nervous system assumes it is good, even when it slowly removes emotional depth from your life. And here's the deeper truth underneath all of this. Your nervous system is not trying to isolate you, it is trying to reduce uncertainty. Because uncertainty is what overloaded systems struggle with most. Uncertainty requires vigilance, prediction, monitoring, emotional preparation. And eventually your brain becomes tired of maintaining that level of internal alertness around people. So it creates a shortcut. Less exposure equals less activation, and that shortcut works immediately, which is why it becomes dangerous. Because the brain trusts immediate relief more than long-term consequences. And over time, this turns into identity. You stop thinking, I need space right now, and start thinking, I am just someone who likes being alone. But there is a difference between preference and adaptation. A huge difference. And most people never examine where their preferences actually came from. Because patterns repeated long enough always feel natural, even when they were originally survival mechanisms. And if this video is making you feel seen in a way you did not expect, subscribe. Not because you need motivation, but because understanding yourself at this level changes how you experience every future relationship. And here's something even more important. Awareness alone does not change patterns. Because nervous systems do not operate on intellectual understanding. They operate on repetition, which is why you can fully understand this pattern and still repeat it tomorrow. Because repetition is stronger than insight, always. But awareness does create one thing: space, a small interruption between automatic reaction and conscious choice. And that interruption matters more than most people realize. Because once a pattern becomes visible, it stops being fully unconscious. And what stops being unconscious can eventually change. Slowly, not instantly, but slowly. And change begins through contradiction. through experiences that do not match the nervous system's prediction, moments where connection does not drain you, moments where someone feels emotionally safe instead of emotionally expensive, moments where vulnerability does not create punishment. At first, your system distrusts those experiences because chaos feels familiar, and familiar often feels safer than healthy. That is one of the strangest things about the human nervous system. It prefers familiar pain over unfamiliar peace, because familiar pain is predictable, and predictability feels survivable. But healing requires something terrifying: updating the prediction system. Teaching your nervous system that not every interaction equals emotional depletion, that not every relationship requires self-abandonment, that not every person becomes emotional labor, and this process feels uncomfortable before it feels peaceful. Because healthy connection initially feels unfamiliar to a nervous system trained inside unpredictability, and unfamiliarity often gets interpreted as danger. That is why some people sabotage healthy relationships without understanding why. Their nervous system trusts chaos more than calm, because chaos feels emotionally recognizable, and recognition creates false safety. But slowly, through repeated safe experiences, the nervous system begins updating itself. This is neuroplasticity. Not motivation, not mindset, repetition. New emotional outcomes repeated enough times that the brain stops expecting danger automatically. And eventually something changes quietly inside you. You stop preparing for emotional exhaustion before conversations even begin. You stop assuming every interaction will cost energy. You stop feeling like human connection automatically requires recovery. And for the first time, connection starts feeling lighter than isolation. That is the moment your nervous system begins leaving survival mode. Not completely, but enough to breathe differently, enough to stop disappearing from people automatically, enough to realize you were never broken, just adapted, deeply adapted. And maybe that is the most important part of this entire video. The version of you that disappeared was not weak. It was protective. Your nervous system was trying to save your energy the only way it knew how, by reducing unpredictability, reducing emotional overload, reducing pain. But eventually survival mechanisms can outlive the danger they were built for. And when that happens, the same walls that once protected your peace can start imprisoning it. And maybe that is the real question hidden underneath this entire conversation. Not, why do I feel better after cutting people off? But, what kind of nervous system learned to experience human connection as emotional danger in the first place? Because the answer to that question changes everything. And if this video felt like someone finally explained your inner world, leave the word peace in the comments. Not for the algorithm, as proof to yourself that your nervous system is finally becoming conscious of patterns it has been repeating silently for years.